Hello, it's Alex and welcome to Hey Little Thrifter. Today I thought I would take a look back at the goals I had at the beginning of 2019 and see how I did with all of them, and also talk a little bit about my goals for 2020. So for 2019 I didn't have a specific number of books that I wanted to read within the year, but somehow I managed to read 101 books, which is pretty crazy. It's definitely the most I've ever read in a year, and even though I wasn't aiming for a particular number, I did push myself to read more, so it turns out that that worked. I took part in quite a few readathons and stuff, which I think always helps push me a bit more to read more, you know, within that particular month. But to be fair, some of these books were short ones, so yeah, it's not like they were all, you know, 500-page novels or anything. But nevertheless, I read 101 books, so that's pretty cool. Another goal that I had at the beginning of last year was to read more from my shelves, and I think I calculated it that 2/3 of the books I read last year were ones I owned, and not saying that they were ones I owned at the beginning of the year. There were definitely some that I acquired throughout the year that I read, but either way, I think reading books that I actually have is still a good thing. So I think 2/3 was pretty good. I guess the other third would be books I borrowed from the library, both physical books, ebooks and audiobooks. I definitely bought a few books on Kindle, and yeah, I think that probably covers it. Another of my goals was to read/reread some more of my point horror books, and I read 11, so that's almost one a month, which isn't bad. And I also read a few other 90s YA horror novels that weren't part of the series. But yeah, I've really been enjoying revisiting them. There's so much nostalgia there and they're really fun, so I definitely want to continue that in the new year. Another goal I had was to keep reading horror, and I think I succeeded in that. I wanted to seek out more women authors, so yeah, I definitely feel like I did that too. I also wanted to read more of my vintage paperbacks from hell type books, which I definitely accomplished. I decided in preparation for this video to get some Chinese food and some fuck-off spreadsheets and get some statistics together. So it turns out that out of the 101 books I read in 2019, about 90% was horror. So I'm really happy with that, and that's something I want to continue indefinitely because I'm really enjoying reading in that genre. About 2/3 of the horror that I read was vintage, so typically 1970s, 80s and 90s, so that includes adult horror and also YA horror from that era. And of the vintage horror I read, specifically adult horror, 2/3 of what I read I rated 4 stars or above, which I think is pretty amazing. I definitely feel like I've found my niche of what I enjoy reading. I've really found some amazing authors and some amazing books within that era of horror, and yeah, it's something I want to keep reading for sure. Another goal I had was to read more indie horror authors, and I did make an effort to do that. I think about 15% of what I read last year was indie horror, and I did have a bit more of a mixed experience with that. I did read some great ones and I had a few 4-star reads, which is an excellent rating, but no 5 stars. And also I did have a few 2 stars, and my only 1-star book of the year was also within indie horror. So I'm trying not to let that taint my view of it. Obviously, just because I read a few crappy books doesn't mean I'm going to disregard a whole thing, but it does mean I have to be a bit more picky with what I do read in future, and I am still kind of learning that within indie horror. I feel it's easy to get caught up in ones that I see a lot of good reviews for, because sometimes I've found with those ones I've had like the completely opposite experience to a lot of people, it seems. And yeah, sometimes it's hard to tell from the reviews what is just marketing. So yeah, I feel that's just something I need to be a bit more choosy with in future, and yeah, not get swept up in the hype surrounding certain books and authors, and just yeah, really pick up the ones that just intrigue me. And also I need to DNF better, because a few of these ones I just was not enjoying at all, but because they had such great reviews, I wanted to give them more of a chance, and hopefully I would enjoy them as much as other people have. But it just turns out they weren't for me, and I didn't enjoy them, even though I ploughed through the whole thing. A couple more stats for you. My average rating for the whole year ended up being 3.54, which isn't bad. You know, it could be higher, but I don't think that's too bad. And my male to female author ratio, I wasn't specifically aiming for a particular number or anything. I definitely was making more of an effort to read more women authors, but I didn't know until the end of the year, you know, what I'd read compared to the male authors. But it turns out it was pretty much 60 to 40 women to men, which I was actually really surprised with. I thought that I would have read more men overall, but I don't feel I had to try too hard actually to read more women. It just kind of happened, so that's pretty cool. And interestingly enough, my average rating overall for the books I read by male authors was 3.43, and for the female authors it was 3.62. There's not much in it, but it was still kind of interesting to see a slight difference in favour of the ladies. So I think that's it for the statistics. I've never actually done that before with my reading and kind of really delved into the facts and figures, but it was really fun and interesting to find out some details. I think the biggest thing that I took away from that is my love of vintage horror. I think I knew I was into it, but seeing the facts and figures really solidified the fact that it's the one thing that I am enjoying the most in my reading. So there will definitely be more of that on my to read list. Okay, another goal that I had at the beginning of 2019 was kind of a maybe thing about rereading some books that I have read and loved in the past, and I didn't do this. Well, I guess technically I reread some point horror books. Admittedly, that was just a maybe goal anyway, so I don't feel too bad about not completing that. I also had a bunch of specific books on my kind of TBR for the year, and I did accomplish that, so well done me. But I will admit that a lot of them ended up getting pushed like right to the end of the year, and I was literally finishing up December reading a few of them. I guess I get distracted sometimes with other books that come along, and yeah, I guess I kept thinking, oh, I still have X amount of months left, I can totally still fit in all of these books by the end of the year. But nevertheless, I did accomplish that goal. So with the horror books, I had a pretty good time with those. I read The Night Walker by Thomas Tessier, which was a 3-star read for me. To the Devil a Daughter by Dennis Wheatley was 3.5 stars. Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice was 4 stars. The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum was 5 stars. And I read 2 Kathy Koja novels, Skin and Bad Brains, and they were both 5 stars as well. So yeah, I had a pretty good time with those horror ones. And then there were 5 kind of classics, modern classics that I wanted to read. I still had an okay time with those, but not quite as consistent. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. I actually DNF'd that one. I just wasn't into it. Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes was 3 stars. The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath was also 3 stars. Lord of the Flies by William Golding was 4 stars. And Beloved by Toni Morrison was 5 stars. So yeah, I'm glad I completed that goal. And yeah, I think that was pretty much it for my goals for 2019. Before I move on to the 2020 stuff, I thought I would also take a moment to just look back on some other things I accomplished last year. I co-hosted a few readathons and a read-along, and all of those were really fun, and I hope to do more of those in 2020. It's really good to be able to collaborate with other people here and do something, you know, of a common interest and get more people involved. It just really helps with the sense of community here and being able to connect with other people that are into the same things. So yeah, those were a lot of fun. Oh, and also for Half a Weenathon, which was created by the Spine Breakers, and I was one of the co-hosts for that. I dressed up as Garth Marenghi, which was so much fun and quite honestly a highlight of my year, if not yours too. I started my Nightmare Queens series, which I know I already mentioned, and that's a vintage horror book review by a female author. I've really enjoyed doing those and hopefully brought some hidden gems to your attention. I created my first ever tag video. It was the Horror Booktube tag, which was because I didn't really see any horror book tags out there. I thought we deserved one, and I was pretty pleased with what I came up with and super pleased to see how many people joined in. I have really enjoyed watching everyone's videos. It introduced me to a bunch of new channels which I subscribe to. I was hoping it would be a way to find other horror fiction fans on BookTube, so it definitely succeeded in that respect, and yeah, I hope it has been helpful for other people to, you know, maybe be able to search for that tag and watch people's videos and find new people they want to subscribe to. I guess as with most tags, there's kind of usually you know, buzz of activity initially and then it kind of dies off, but I have still seen some people do the tag, and yeah, I would definitely encourage anyone watching that hasn't done it and wants to definitely do it. Don't feel that it's out of date or anything, you know, horror is eternal. A couple of other highlights of my year was I got to meet up with not one but two other booktubers. I met Olive from abookolive and Stephanie from That's What She Read. They are both absolutely awesome, and I've really enjoyed being able to hang out with them in real life, and yeah, hope we can all catch up again in the new year. So moving on to 2020 and some of my plans and goals for the year. I had to look back and check when I actually joined YouTube. Apparently it was March 2016, so I guess this year in a couple of months it'll be my 4-year anniversary of being on YouTube, which is kind of weird. That's quite a long time. I started my channel actually as a thrifting channel, but I was also watching a lot of BookTube at the same time and realised that that was something I wanted to do. So I started doing more book related videos and realised that that's what I wanted to focus on. So I think I officially kind of joined BookTube in January 2018. So yeah, I guess right now that's 2 years of officially being on BookTube, which is pretty exciting. It's been a really fun journey. I've met some amazing people, so yeah, it's been awesome. Okay, so what goals do I have for the coming year? I'm not setting a particular number of books I want to read. Yeah, I feel like I'll get bogged down and it will put too much pressure on me, so I'm just not even going to put a number on that. I want to continue reading vintage horror. As I mentioned before, that's something that I've really been enjoying, and yeah, I mean, they're not all winners, you know, there are definitely some duds, but I think it was 2/3 of the books I read from that era were 4-star ratings or higher for me, so I'm definitely onto something there. Like, yeah, that's my jam. I think it's fair to say. I also want to continue reading and reviewing some more Nightmare Queens, so yeah, my plan is to do a review video once a month. I also want to continue reading/rereading my point horror books and other vintage YA horror. I was also thinking of doing maybe a review series for the point horror books, but I know I've already reviewed a bunch of them last year in like my monthly reading wrap-ups, so I wasn't quite sure how to go about it, whether like individual review videos for each one would be fun/helpful. Yeah, I haven't quite figured out what I want to do with that, but if you have any thoughts or suggestions, please let me know. I feel like I want to get back into more mood reading and just selecting my next book on a whim, depending on what I want to read in the moment. I was generally that kind of reader, but I think this past year, because I was really trying to read more, I did find it helpful to kind of have a list of what I wanted to read and try and stick to it. And even though I've only been sharing like quarterly TBR videos on my channel, so that's only 4 a year, I feel like I might just cut that out because I want to be a bit more loose with my reading this year, just put less pressure on myself and yeah, just kind of be a bit more in the moment. Saying that, I do want to take part in some readathons this year, so obviously those are the months or whatever that I will be planning a specific TBR, so I'm definitely happy to do that, but I just think the rest of the year I want to kind of take it a bit easier on myself and just yeah, be a bit more relaxed about my TBR. Speaking of readathons, I do have one coming up that I'm co-hosting. It is the Ladies of Horror Fiction readathon, and that will be happening in February, so that's right around the corner already. I will have a video coming up very soon where I talk about the prompts for the readathon and what I'm going to be reading, so yeah, keep an eye out for that. And I'm also taking part in the If You've Got It, Read It challenge, which is a year-long challenge to read more of the books I currently own. This was created by the awesome Spine Breakers. I will leave their video linked below so you can go check out the details, but basically there are 24 prompts, so that only works out to be an average of 2 books a month, which seems totally doable, and I just hope I don't do like last year where I just push everything till the end of the year and then have to cram it all in. I am going to try and stick to at least 2 books a month, and I've already read 1, so I guess that's a pretty good start. I also need to DNF better. I think this is something I've mentioned before, but I do have a hard time with that, especially if I see other people have really enjoyed a book and I'm just not feeling it. I feel like I need to give it more of a chance, and hopefully I will enjoy it overall, but my experience in that hasn't actually been the case, so I need to realise that. And yeah, if I'm not feeling a book, it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks, it's down to my experience. So if that differs, you know, that's okay, and rather than kind of wasting any more time on a book I'm not enjoying, I just need to admit it's not going to work and I need to put it down and pick up something else and move on. So hopefully I can do that. And another thing I forgot to mention, but one thing I did start doing in 2019 was reviewing every book on Goodreads, and that's something I actually did manage to stick with. Sometimes a bunch of books will pile up before I've got a chance to review any of them, and then I'll have to sit down and spend a chunk of time reviewing them all at once to get them done, but it is something I enjoy doing, and yeah, some of my reviews on Goodreads are more in-depth than others, but I have managed to review everything I've read. So yeah, if you're not following me on Goodreads and you would like to, I will leave the link in the description below. So that was my review of my 2019 reading and my plans for 2020. I've seen a bunch of people do similar videos, and yeah, it's really enjoyable to watch what other people have accomplished and what they hope to accomplish in the coming year. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If there is anything you would like to see more or less of on my channel, please feel free to mention it in the comments below. I definitely welcome constructive criticism and suggestions, so yeah, please do let me know. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye!